everyone. Welcome to my show. Autumn is here. I'm your host, Francine Crawford, and today we have a special guest. We have Mr. Mike Dwyer, and he is the founder of Emplana Career. And it's something that I'm sure that we would like to know. We would get some benefits from knowing much more about it. So just welcome him to the show. Welcome, Mike. How are you today?
Just fine, Francine. Thanks so much for having me. Thanks, and actually, thank you for the good work you do in trying to help caregivers.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'm trying to do as little as I can. You know, everybody has to, serve their corner. So I'm trying to do that. But your career, it's very interesting. It's very interesting that I want you to tell me a little bit about yourself, but I also wanted to know about Emplana Career. So first, let's start about a little bit about your background.
So, well, I grew up in triple deckers in Somerville. My first job was picking up trash on an orange truck at the city of Somerville. So I don't have any heirs. You know what I mean? And turns out, if you didn't like to work, then I went to college at UMass Amherst, and eventually I got a master's degree. I've worked for big consultancies like Ernst & Young and Deloitte Consulting. I had 10 years abroad in Bermuda.
Oh.
And wow, it's a lovely vacation destination. It was real work. I was running around Zurich, London, Dublin, Hamilton, New York. So basically, I've been going 100 miles an hour for decades. And maybe about 15 years ago, I'm sure, Francine, you're in business enough, and I'm sure people ask you to look at their resume sometimes, right?
Right. Yes.
Well, what happened to me that fine day is instead of just doing the usual move this here, or I caught a typo or something, it started me thinking this person that I was dealing with was a middle manager in a bank. And for some reason, I started thinking about possibilities. Should you be reaching for one more executive role before you retire? Should you say to yourself, I'd like to be a line professional and just be really good at being an analyst? So there's some choices there. And then the other thing that occurred to me as I was working with this person was, if you added this or that skill, I could picture you doing something else.
Oh, okay.
And that has been the fun part. That's the genesis of Emplana Career.
Okay. That's great. That's great. So sometimes in what you do, you actually help people realize some unrealized dreams that they had, or some things that they've put aside and just, didn't revisit. And now you might stir it up in them and they revisit it and they're able to do it.
That's right. Although I'm at the grounded end of everything, Francine. So nothing too lofty or anything. Basically what I'm looking for, and let me tip my hand a little bit about your busy caregivers who are under pressure.
Yeah.
To me, the number one thing to do is to think about your personal time pie chart. Where am I spending my time? And what little bits of time could I invest? So in preparing for this meeting with you, I was thinking, listening to some of your people trying to advocate with the medical community, trying to arrange financial matters, so much to do. But even if you could just take 15 minutes a day, I think there's a couple of activities you'd want to do. Maybe it's a Monday, Wednesday, Friday for one, and Tuesday, Thursday, weekend for the other. And first, it's to harvest your past.
Okay.
Look through those old emails, any files. Maybe it turns out when you think about it, and kind of back to what you said a minute ago, maybe it turns out you have organized events. Maybe there's some people you should be back in touch with. Come to think of it, I worked pretty well with that person. I wonder where they are now.
Yeah.
So that's one dynamic. Then the other one is, how can I take a look outside? Maybe I'll look on some job boards. It's a new world now. One of the things we have now is a gig economy. I've hired people off Upwork, and I've placed people on Fiverr, meaning somebody you can hire for 10 hours for a certain thing, or for so many hours a week to help you with administrative assistant work or concierge or whatever else. So let's just stop for a minute. I'd like to just kind of regroup with you. But if we can picture your busy caregiver just taking a little time to look backwards, what have I done? What do I know? Who do I know? And then look outwards a little bit and say, what's out there that matches what I seem to have a start at or whatever. That could be the beginning of a very healthy dynamic.
That's very interesting. And many times I've speak to caregivers who have finished their caregiving job, their duties and stuff like that, and they do not know how to get started again. They don't even know if they should go back to what they were doing, or they're, you know what I mean? Because they had so much time giving to other people that now it's like that's this period of time that they have to rethink and restructure. And this is a good way for them to try to, think about what they've done, what they're interested in, what they want to do now. You may not want to do what you used to do. It's time to think about that. So, how do you start back to get back to that?
Right. So what we're shaking hands on is sort of a general start that says, I might be doing this, I might be squeezing this in while I'm being the caregiver
Mm-hmm.
because I still got to scare up some income, or, it's the only way I can rest in peace is to make a little progress at this stuff. Or it might be, as you say, when suddenly I've gone all out at one thing to a full stop and I need to restart. I think either of those scenarios benefits from kind of a disciplined look at your past. And I believe in time boxes. It's possible today in the internet to find rabbit hole after rabbit hole after rabbit hole.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to do that. You want to look through your old emails. You want to look through some things and be pretty disciplined about taking some time to harvest the past and be just as disciplined to look at what's out there. Another thing I think is very important is to put together a little, people call it a personal board or an advisory board.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what you do, you're going to have to do some networking. And the place to start is with a small group of people who agree to be your trusted partners. Because you don't want to be telling your story all day long to the cashier at the grocery store and making the mailman late for his next house. You want to get kind of a handshake that says, look, I'm finding my way again. And I find some people you admire, an uncle who's been in business, an aunt who's been in business. I love seeing that these days. Could be either, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, put a little community together that can help you test ideas, suggest someone you might want to talk to.
So let me ask you a question. Sometimes I'm sure that you deal with some people who there's challenges. They want to do it, but they're reluctant, or they're fearful because they've done a job for 30 years, 40 years, and now they want to do something else. Like you said, life has changed, things have changed. How do you deal with them to get them motivated or not fearful of stepping into something new or different?
Well, I think one of the things you want this personal board, whether it's you get in touch with Emplana Career or whether you turn to some trusted colleagues and neighbors and friends, family, whatever, that's exactly where you want some feedback. If everyone around you says, if you don't mind, I'll just tease you and personalize it a little bit. Francine, I think you should be doing a podcast. Why don't you get out there? Okay. If your community are all telling you something like that, maybe you want to listen. On the other hand, another approach, I'm a big believer in incrementalism, putting your toe in the water. And with things like job boards and gig economy, it's absolutely possible to try something. In fact, there's an artist I know, I'll just be brief, I know we got to stay focused, but I know an artist who said, I wanted to become a letterpress. The person makes beautiful, empathetic, handmade greeting cards.
Oh, nice.
She's a marvelous artist. And what she did is she didn't quit the day job.
Mm-hmm.
She rented space on a letterpress and did a few cards. Then she did a little more. And then eventually she bought a letterpress. And as it turns out now, she's been on Good Morning America with a book about grief. She's an amazing person. But her journey took probably 6 or 8 years, and each time a little further from shore, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
So I think you want to turn to this community to help you figure out, am I being too timid? How does this sound? Do you think I could do it? And then put a game plan together that says, how can I give this a try without selling the house or doing anything too drastic?
Right. So with Emplana, you assess them in different ways. Tell me.
Yeah, although it's funny. You know, Steve Dubin, you mentioned, he and I realized somewhere on all of these press things and everything else that I'm here working with him, I don't try and be a spiritual advisor
Mhm.
or try and tell you what your passion is. It's more if you want to test some ideas and try things, let's talk mechanics. That's where I fit in. Because where could we find you the kind of work you're looking for? Do you belong in a for-profit or nonprofit? Could you squeeze in some part-time work to give this new thing a try? Those are the kinds of bread and butter. But I also will share with you that while I focus on seniors, I also do a lot of work with graduate students. I have I've hired some grad students, and I get in at a local university career office. And so um, the things I'm saying, I'm hoping they fit at least to some degree for everyone. Now, you take an MBA grad student who's 2 months of graduation, that person has momentum, you know, they're freshly trained. That's kind of a different story. And the advice and the process is a little different there. But I think worrying about your caregivers, whether they're still giving care or whether they're trying to readjust afterwards, so far what I was thinking the most tailored thing we could do is just put put them on this little time budget. It says, look back, harvest what I've done,
Mhm.
look around, and then start testing that out in the community, and then start translating that into an action plan that might say, I'm actually going to talk to somebody.
It's interesting because also some of the caregivers who have gone through this have been inspired to do something different than their career that they're actually on. Some people have left their career and they want to do something in social services or healthcare because they're involved in this and this has impacted them in such a way of caring for someone that they want to change fields. Is that something that they would run by some, like a company like Impala to say, sorry, Implana, to say, is that possible? You know what I'm saying? They think about it, they're not sure because it's far away from what they used to do.
I would also look at my community resources.
Mhm.
Um, is there at City Hall, Boston? Boy, there are some wonderful people there that can help newly arrived immigrants, job placements. There's so many resources. You might find that the career evening at your local library, yes, Emplana Career can help almost anyone, although we're probably not our best in, probably not the strongest background in healthcare
Mhm.
or social services, but we can help anybody. But I think part of this idea of forming your community
Mhm.
would be finding the people and forums that inform that direction that's starting to take shape. And whether it's Emplana Career or anyone,
Mhm.
get some help. I'll tell you kind of a sad thing. Um, a few years ago, I commissioned a marketing study, literally a marketing strategy, and on this whole career coaching, advisory, all this. And we did some focus groups. And what's kind of interesting, but a little unfortunate is when people want to get in shape, they figure, I got to get a trainer. But when they want to change career, they think, I got to do this alone. I should be able to do it. And I think it's the most collaborative, brainstormy time of anything.
Yeah.
If you're willing to get a trainer to get in shape, why wouldn't you put a little community together, whether you turn to a company or just find the right group around you to help you think about these things?
Yeah, I think you're right about that. A lot of times we think we have to do it by ourselves or on our own, or even that, what we think is far fetched or something like that. It would be good to have some input from
Absolutely.
someone, that can say, hey, yeah, maybe try this. And like you said, sometimes increments, little steps, maybe, just try certain little things to get familiar with a career path or something. And then you can see, well, maybe this is what I want or maybe not. So,
Right.
yeah.
That's a great thing. And one of the things that Steve Dubin and I have actually a registered networking course with the Commonwealth and like, and one of the things we've realized is you want to avoid a big ask in these scenarios in any kind of networking.
Okay.
One of the things that's very disarming is if you just say someone who's got a presence in a certain field or sector, social, somebody who's a social worker, somebody who runs a company in healthcare, whatever it might be. If you say to them, get me a job, that's a big ask. If you say to them, what do you think's emerging? Here's what I think I should be studying. How does that strike you? Oh, well, that's a very easy and flattering approach. And so we always counsel that that's the way to go about it. Start to form a plan, share that a little bit. And one of the other things I want to observe is that you have to think about maybe going out on your own. Many people, that same mindset you described, it's hard to let go of what I used to have.
Right.
You know what? For a couple $100 online, you can get a tax ID, and a few $100, the Secretary of State, you got yourself an LLC. It's really not that hard to imagine doing something.
Mm-hmm.
And if one of the things you want the community to be helping you think through is, do I have an offering? Is there something that I know so much about that I could start? And maybe someone who's got a career who's now saying, like, maybe you know how to organize events. And now you want to move into it because you've had such a profound experience as a caregiver, you want to move in a new direction. But it might be fun to start thinking about, are there events I could organize? Are there companies doing that I could join and kind of learn until I go out on my own? You see how just even as we imagine a person together, Francine, we start thinking about, oh yeah, you could do this, you could look at that. So maybe a little bit down the road, person's got their own business and they're off and running.
That's great. That's great. We also, talk to seniors and, you know, sometimes they don't know what to do. They go to centers and they learn something and then they get interested in that something that they haven't, like art and different things like that. They don't know what to do. And you're saying like they could kind of do that as another career as opposed to just a hobby or something like that, or gardening or, different things like that.
Absolutely, especially today. So my wife bought me a drone a few years ago. I'm a nerd, okay? And I finally got around to doing this thing, and I got some pictures of my son's property. He's got a pretty good sized property in Kingston Pass, and
Mm.
I got some pictures of our rooftop. And I started realizing, you know what? You actually could make a side gig,
Mm.
whether it's additive printing or drones. And so for my birthday, my wife bought me a book on drones and photography, but she also bought me a book of small business ideas based on a drone. Now, I'm not telling your listeners to go learn about drones,
Right.
but what I'm saying is, what a great example or parallel.
Mm-hmm.
Because as soon as I started seeing these 4K pictures, a little light bulb went off that said, wow,
Wow.
you could show your neighbors that their gutters actually do need to be replaced. Or you could, when you test it out, put a little toe in the water, chat it up, and then go find the resources. Like I say, I just got the book recently, but my wife gave me small businesses that are connected with the drone. I think that's going to be a hoot. And I also think, Francine, from a positivism point of view, from a mental health point of view,
Okay.
if we can say to ourselves, I'm going to invest just a little bit of time, even when in the darkest days when I'm in the middle of caregiving and perhaps fighting with the medical community or lawyers or whatever else is going. I heard some difficult things in some of your podcasts. The idea that you have a notebook or an online file or something that's starting to record a few of the things that interested you in the past and looking through, this is someone I want to get in touch with, whatever. And a little bit of what's shaping up as an idea or a possibility. No, I always tell people, I don't care if you're digital and electronic or if you're paper and pen, but if you're paper and pen, make sure you take a picture every once in a while, because last thing we want to do is leave that notebook on a bus.
Right.
If it's got 2 months worth of observations on it.
Right.
Like, you see, I hope I hope I'm fitting to your listeners that, you could chip away, or if you have some time, if you're done with caregiving and you really need to go, you could do it as more of a full-time activity. That you look back, what do I know? Who do I know? What interested me?
Yeah.
And then translate that into looking ahead and start exploring. Well, I think that is, when we do things like that, I think we establish momentum.
Yeah.
And and the other thing too, I know some of the times when I'm dealing with seniors, if you've been retired for a while, I usually have to say to somebody, hey, remember, no war stories, right? No tangents, right? You've been retired. Steve wrote an article for a thing about retirees. Okay, you play pickleball every day. You caught up on BritBox, but if you've been living like that for a while, fitting back into the business world where you talk, see how it's received, respond, and you get the cadence of business and society. And if that's one of the things I think too, that we all have to keep in mind. If we've left the workforce or we've been doing other kinds of things or caregiving, we have to be a little conscious and intentional about fitting ourselves back in.
Yeah, yeah. All that helps, like you said, people are living longer and you retire, you have a lot more time to give. And, you need to keep socializing, you need to keep engaging. These are ways that you can engage and do something, to keep thinking, keep physically active, and just to have something to do that you can engage with other people and keep the social connection together, because that all helps with your health. It really does.
Hear, what she said.
Yeah.
I think, well, I appreciate your feedback. I feel like we're working this together and thinking it through. It is a joy. I think, let's focus on seniors for a minute.
Okay.
Usually there's a lot of experience, but there's some things you have to go through. First of all, looking for work is completely different now, right? Like I mentioned, job boards and Indeed. The other thing is AI, bots.
Yeah.
I mean, I know freshly trained MBA grad students who are sending 200 resumes and not even getting an answer. Oh, it's brutal. And so networking and for the MBA, they're pretty fresh and up to speed on skills. But for the rest of us, as within that time budget, whatever you can afford, some combination of networking and intentional skills development. Those two activities reinforce each other. Because if you're talking to people as you get into a new sector or you get back into your old one, you can say, what's emerging? What do I need to study? And then go look at that. The skills give you things to bring to the networking. The networking tells you what to study. And that's a really helpful, that's a kind of a holistic, ecosystem that develops progress. The other thing I'd throw out there too is, I wish I had a great volunteer experience, but I wish I could have told you I had intentionally selected that. I just felt like I should do something. I go to my town meeting for 25 years, and every year they say, fill out a talent blank and volunteer. And maybe after about 23 years, I said to myself, you know what, I really should do this. And I just put it in there, put me wherever you want. Well, they put me on the audit committee. I have some financial background, master's in management, blah, blah, blah. Well, surprise, surprise. In my day job, in my consulting practice, I'm working with the public pension. Now, all of a sudden, I'm getting the actuarial reports that I used to help get data for. I'm getting the audit results that we used to provide, help to provide data for the clients. And so, my word, all of a sudden it let me have a very different seat at the same table. It was enormously helpful. So what I'm saying to your listeners, don't be like me and hit something like that by accident. You can actually select
Uh-huh.
some sort of a role that lets you put that toe in the water again,
Mhm.
whether it's local government, community, church, something that lets you try what you think you're interested in.
I would just ask you, is there something that we miss, we overlook, that we should be thinking about, either whether it was caregiving or whether it was with seniors? Is it something that we should be thinking about even prior to getting to that stage where we retire or stuff like that? What should we be thinking about?
Well, I think you want to let your imagination and your dreams happen.
Mm.
Um, don't don't be too practical, but form a little team. You'll see in the news, the business press, they'll call it a personal board. I don't care what you call it. Get a little few group of some people you trust and
Mhm.
people who are going to say to you, no, Mike, that's not a great idea. I think you could go out of business real fast at that. Okay, why? Um, but I think the progression we've just walked through that said, let me go back and kind of harvest what I've done, then match that with an activity that says, let me look at how those fit into what's out there.
Mhm.
Am I starting to get a sense of what I might be interested in? You gave a great example before where some caregivers know the answer already. Okay, I now know what I need to do, what the rest of my life's work's going to be because of this caregiving experience. That's great because now you got something solved. Now you just have to do all these mechanics. Go figure out who you know, how to get started, start the networking, little volunteer, little skills, whatever you need, mix it up. But you definitely need some people. And your Emplana Career is always happy to help. But more and more, I have a consulting practice that's very successful. This is a passion side project. I've hired a couple grad students sometime. I'm sure I'll do that again. I got a little book taking shape, but it's not about twisting arms to get a couple of billable hours. It's much more about these kinds of conversations. What would make sense? What do we think? And I think one of the most critical things for your listeners, whether they're in the stress of caregiving or
Mhm.
trying to get going again afterwards, is to have a little community. Um, and I want to give you a little bit of a blunt example, with your permission. I
Sure.
once knew somebody who was really, really highly qualified. I'm literally PhD, fellow of American Nutritionalists, this, that. But you know what? Even universities downsize. And this is a person who hasn't had to look for a job in 40 years.
Mhm.
And I start describing some of the things she's doing, and she said, yes, I get together with a bunch of other unemployed people every day. And I had to say, that might be a support group, but that's not going to be what I'm describing, that says the people who are active, who can advise you, who can push back, that's what you want.
Mhm.
Make sense?
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. You want some input from different people. Yeah. Who can help you along the way and who can counter what you say. You know what I mean? Because you might think about it one way and they might have another way that, oh, okay, wait, I didn't think about that. So, always it's always good to have conversation. It's always good to, be able to bounce something off of someone, and just see what their opinion is. So yeah. And then you make your own decision, you know.
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
I would go so far as to say I learned a heck of a lesson from the dollars I spent on that marketing strategy work,
Mm,
that said a focus group says that it's expected that we hire a trainer to get in shape,
mhm.
but inside our hearts, we think we have to go on our own to figure out our job and career.
Right.
I, I just would say to anybody, don't do that.
Don't do it alone.
Don't do it alone.
Okay, okay. Well, great. Thank you so much for taking the time for giving us some information, not only about your business, Emplana, but also just in general that what people can do, as they age, or what caregivers can do if they, want to do something else different. And like you said, take some time while you're caregiving. Take 15 minutes, take a half an hour to kind of think about, things that you might be interested in, and things that you can do, and things that you might want to learn. You might have thought about something like, okay, I might want to learn how to do this. So it's great for you to do that and give some suggestions and get people thinking. My thing is to try to prepare. Let's not pretend that aging is not going to happen, that we're not going to, be senior. We're going to work forever. We're going to retire. Start thinking about that. What are you going to do? What do you want to do? What's in your heart? You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Excellent. Oh, what a nice summary.
So thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you for coming on and getting all the information that you give. And I wish you luck with your business. And thank you for serving seniors and other people, and graduates also. It's very nice.
Well, thank you too. And Francine, I mean, the work you do is really altruistic and impressive. So thanks back to you, and thanks for having me on your show.
Okay. All right. Take care.